All right. Anyway, we got to get out of this thing because what was next? The main event. And I knew we were in trouble when this thing started and there was like 20-something minutes left on the show. I was like, oh, God, this is going to be interminable. A Falls Count Anywhere match, Brian, with guess what? No DQ. It's not enough. It's a Falls Count Anywhere match and on free television. But it's got to be no DQ because we know how to say no DQ in all petite wrestling speak, lazy booking. And it's another slapped together tag team match with people that don't get along or aren't supposed to get along or might not get along. Kenta is out first. Announced at 194 pounds, he comes out with a New Japan briefcase with they're doing the same thing. Basically, everybody that thinks of a briefcase in wrestling now thinks of the Money in the Bank briefcase. The WWE's established it. It's been years. They get the title shot to blah, blah, blah. So New Japan does the same thing. That's fine because they're in Japan. Now they bring it on this show. And now, once again, for any wrestling fan who has seeing this show for the first time, doesn't know what the fuck's going on, they just see, oh, they're copying the WWE with a briefcase. It just looks so fucking hokey and outlaw. I saved 5 minutes on Twinkle Toes' entrance. I saved a bunch of time. Moxley still come in from the parking lot, I believe, whatever. So the match is Kenta and Kenny Olivier against Lance Archer and Jon Moxley with Jake Roberts. And I thought, poor Lance Archer. He's the one that in the middle of this stands a chance of getting over, and he's surrounded by a cast of mud show goofballs that fucking can't figure it out.
Hey, can I just say something that hit me during this match? I'd like to know what anyone else thinks. I haven't watched any older AEW footage in a while. Has Jon Moxley lost a lot of muscle tone? Like physically, does he look smaller than he did a year ago, year and a half ago?
I never saw any muscle tone on him, but he does look painfully thin and pale. He's apparently never taken any advice from Arn Anderson. Arn's favorite phrase used to be when he's going to the tanning bed, used to be, fat looks better brown than white. So this match, they jump-started it, went into a four-way. Little did I know, they never actually had a match here. They started with a four-way and never settled it down to have a match. They just did a four-way for 20-something minutes. And Kenta had used the briefcase 3 times within the first 30 seconds of the match. Once on Archer, who didn't sell it. Whacked him in the back, and Archer turned around, and everything Kenta did, Archer no-sold. Which he should have, because he's 75 pounds bigger and a foot taller. And there's excrement on commentary over, can you believe Kenta is here? It was like, can you believe Hulk Hogan is here? Yes, anybody who's ever heard of fucking Kenta, which is a minute portion of the audience, can believe that he's there. Because he lives in Florida, apparently. Why would he be?
Excalibur was unbearable here. And he kept yelling, horrible. The forbidden door is open! As if anyone has any idea what the fuck that means. Hey. Apparently the forbidden door is AEW and New Japan working together.
No, the forbidden door is this fucking back door at this porn shop outside the Philly airport. And that's where they had the good shit.
Okay.
But I didn't know excrement knew about that. Nevertheless, everybody on every tape spoke German. Anyway, so basically, that's the thing. They're making a big deal out of Kenta. They're making the big deal out of the New Japan relationship. They are preaching to the choir. They are appealing to the converted. Anybody who knows who the fuck Kenta is and gives a fuck about seeing him is already watching this program. And they just kept doing shit. They never, like I said, they never had a match. They just did a 4-way all the way. They went out on the fucking floor, and then there's a break, and then no, wait, first, I'm sorry, the garbage can deal. Twinkle Toes comes in with a garbage can, hits Moxley with it, then turns the garbage can upside down and puts it on the ring post, goes to the far side of the ring, runs across the ring, jumps up on the ropes, grabs the can, and moonsaults with the can onto Moxley, who laid there and let him do it. Why would anybody watch this shit? That is without a doubt the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Not only that you would have a blunt instrument, a weapon in your hand that you hit a guy over the head with, and then instead of hitting him now that he's down 17 more times and killing him, you walk over, put the can upside down on the post, go back across the ring, run, jump, grab the can and do a flip, risk killing yourself, and you land on the guy. And we now know that Moxley is in no way smart to the wrestling business because he laid there and took it. And that's a mark of a complete fucking idiot. Guy's moonsaulting blind, holding a metal trash can. Move. Anyway, so then Lance Archer came in with a fucking ladder, and that's when they went to the break. And I said, thank God, a break. I can skip 4 minutes. And they came back up. They were out in the arena. Lance Archer chokeslammed finger bang into a fucking couch that's sitting out there for whatever reason.
No, that was Peter Avalon's bed.
Oh, Christ.
Because Peter Avalon, the job guy who isn't very good, when he's in the audience, as all the wrestlers are when they're not actually wrestling, they go out there so they could sing Jericho's song and just play games, video games, whatever it may be. You never know what you're going to see in the AEW audience. Peter Avalon apparently has some sort of bed that he lays on. By the way, no women in that bed. But he lays on that bed waiting for someone to get powerbombed through it or something.
And they spend money on that, too. Somebody bought that couch, or that bed, and somebody moves it out there to ringside. That's what they're spending money on in this company. Why don't they run the same tape every week of the same main event? Because they all look the same. This was completely indistinguishable, except it was longer. The balding plumber and the Japanese midget were up in the empty arena. Archer followed. They started doing false finishes in the kitchen. I wrote, there's 10 minutes left in this show. I can't take it, in capital letters. There was a DDT on the buffet tables. Lance Archer hit Kenta with a box of potatoes so the announcers could do the potato jokes. Then finally they did another break. Then they were back in the ring. Tables, kendo sticks, every bump ever. I quit paying any attention. It just was impossible to watch. And finally, Gallows and Anderson run down. Jake actually gave what approximated a short arm clothesline and then took a punch and went to his knees, bless his little pea-picking heart. But then, bear in mind now, there's 2 referees out there for some reason. But the 2 referees are watching Gallows and Anderson run in, Jake run in, Moxley comes in and hits people multiple times with a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, and they are up and taken over on him seconds later. The referees just stood and watched everything because it's no DQ, a.k.a. lazy booking. All the heels finally bumped all the baby faces. Well, all the baby faces. There was a bump Moxley, and I'm surprised he sold anything. They bumped him out of the ring somewhere, and all the heels picked Lance Archer up and helped Olivier give him the one-winged fairy in front of both referees, and they counted 1, 2, 3. The people not even in the match, and in front of the referees,
no
helped
DQ.
Give the finish. Yeah, lazy booking. An injury angle can never be done again in the wrestling business because there's no reason. Because unless you're just going to drop a fucking safe on a guy off of the top of a skyscraper, there's no reason. This match killed any injury angle ever. I'm going to go on record in saying because of the length of it and because of just the garbage of it and the indiness and awfulness of it, this was the worst AEW television match ever because it was the same as all of the bad ones, but much longer. What do you think?
Geez, when you say something is the worst AEW match ever, there's so much you have to take into account. It wasn't good, and in fact, it was bad. I didn't like it.
More of the bad stuff, less of the good stuff, you're saying.
I didn't like it. It did nothing to make me care about Kenta. It did nothing to make me care about Kenta against Moxley, which you have to think is New Japan's priority here. It did nothing. This whole show did nothing.
Well, yeah, that's
who came out of this show the better?
Didn't New Japan even have some type of request on a finish here to juice their matchup somehow? As far as any kind of interest for the vast majority of people in the world who didn't even know it was going to be happening to begin with? Because Kenta and Moxley were not involved. They could have been involved in some way without one of them actually winning or losing, but they weren't even in the ring at the time.
Look, I get we can't go back to the old days, those old days of 1989. But remember when there was a Clash of Champions, I believe, and the tag team was locked in the back for the 6-man tag titles?
Yes, I'll tell you exactly where it was. Cleveland, Ohio. It was the same night on the Clash. It was February of 1989, George Scott's first Clash. They redid the Flair Steamboat angle where Steamboat ripped Flair's suit off in the middle of the ring with the models there and everything, and that was great. But it was, who was it? Was it Tenryu?
And the Road Warriors.
And the Road Warriors. The point is they had a relationship with Baba at the time because Crockett had, and TBS had just taken over. And they had advertised that the Road Warriors and Tenryu would face Kevin Sullivan's Varsity Club, right? For the 6-man titles. And instead, somehow the Varsity Club locked the dressing room door so that the baby faces couldn't get out, and they switched the match. And it was pretty much the beginning of the end of the relationship with All Japan, because Baba's people were like, what the how do you explain that the wrestlers were locked in the dressing room and couldn't get out? And they were so insulted that they were being asked to tell their fans back in Japan that was the beginning of the end of the relationship, right?
Oh, that was the end of the relationship. Yeah. Baba saw that and said, no. This is not how I do business. I doubt New Japan will have the same philosophy now, but maybe they should.
So anyway, I don't know how anybody can think that match was a positive. It made no sense. It did nothing for anybody. It was just useless waste of 20 million angles, injury angles, and different things. And I mean, there's no baby faces, there's no heels, there's no credibility, there's no logic, there's no contest. It's just people bashing each other with shit and hopping around. And there's no continuity to this program from one week to the next, from one segment to the next. It's amateur, it's insulting. And if I was a talented wrestler in this day and age that had been overlooked for television exposure and watched some of the fucking people that get on this show, I would fucking jump off a bridge. I think that's the worst thing about it, is they had every resource available to them to put together an incredible talent roster of anybody not signed to Vince McMahon and do this thing right. And it's a shit show from the word go, and everybody involved should be ashamed of themselves. And there are a few people there who know what should be done, and apparently they're not being listened to, or they don't give a fuck as long as the check cashes. And that's the best thing I can say about it. So we'll see what they come up with next week. Who's going to get kidnapped next week, Brian? What do you think?
I don't know, but by the way, correction on the topic of kidnappings, which makes it even funnier. I had forgotten this. The match ended up being the Road Warriors and Tenryu versus the Varsity Club of Rotunda, Sullivan, and Steve Williams. Originally, it was going to be the Road Warriors and Tenryu versus the 6-man tag team of Sting, the Junkyard Dog, and Michael Hayes. They were locked in the back.
That's what it was.
And Baba saw that and gave himself a Baba chop and said, no more. No more of this.
Well, and here's the thing. George Scott never intended to have that match, because you would never have had 3 baby faces against 3 baby faces. But because the 6-man tag titles were in there in some fashion, that he false booked it and did that for some reason for an angle. And Baba just said, what the fuck is going on here? But to this day, people have been unfortunately fed the false assumption that wrestling in Japan is treated like a big sport. It used to be, but it's not anymore. We talked about that on the Drive-Thru this past week. There is outlaw wrestling in Japan, too. That's where they're getting their entire Japanese half of the women's AEW tournament from. Outlaw, fucking hokey, indie bullshit in Japan where they bring these teenage pop idol singers in and make them wrestlers. The business in Japan used to be treated more of a shoot and more legitimate and more professional and more seriously from the time that it was started in the early 50s until the end of the 80s. And then with the start of the 90s, when the wrestling in America fell apart, and they had their own problems in Japan with the shoot groups and multiple shoot groups coming up and muddying the waters and etc. But now they do the same shit over there as they do here. They do it more athletically, but they have run-ins. They disregard the rules. They have these weird outlaw groups that have the fucking dolls and the inanimate objects and the fucking goofy costumes. It's as wrestling in Japan for the most part now, today in the year 2021, is as big of a shit show as it is in America. It's just that the wrestlers now in America are such marks for what Japanese wrestling used to be that they still think it's a thrill and an honor and some type of career achievement to be booked in Japan. Even though now every fucking jackleg in the United States can get booked in Japan to one of their outlaw groups. It means nothing anymore. But they've perpetuated this lie that all Japanese wrestlers are great and everybody in Japan takes wrestling more seriously and is more of a sport than the United States. New Japan has some of that. The rest of the groups are just as fucking hokey and phony as the worst of these indies you see here in this country. Am I misrepresenting that, or have I not seen all this shit go on in Japan over the last several years?
No, it's become quite sad what much of Japanese wrestling has become. And now it's infiltrated the American wrestling as well.
Well, no, the American wrestling infiltrated the Japanese wrestling first. And now Japanese wrestling has returned the favor by infiltrating us with a bunch of fucking midgets that do the same thing as our midgets do. But yeah, for the people who were wondering, it used to be an honor to be booked in Japan. For the big companies of Baba and Inoki, for the high-paying spots, for the most serious promotions on earth. Hadn't been that way in a while. They're just as fucking hokey as we are. It's a dog and pony show, just with separate things because of their cultural differences. And unfortunately, people like Twinkle Toes that want to combine those worlds and make it a real mayonnaise jar full of fucking shit. Anyway, are we done for the day?